My name is Alex. I'm 25 and I scrape by doing odd jobs in a wealthy suburb just outside Seattle. It's the kind of place where people drive shiny SUVs, lawns are trimmed to perfection, and everyone assumes you're either rich or working for someone who is. Me, I'm the latter. I fix leaky pipes, mow overgrown yards, paint fences, whatever pays. I live in a cramped one-bedroom apartment that smells like damp carpet and yesterday's takeout. My old pickup truck rattles like it's begging to retire, but it gets me around. Life's not glamorous, but it's mine, and I've learned to live with it. I wasn't always like this. Back in high school, I had plans. College, maybe engineering a real career, but money ran dry, and so did my motivation. I dropped out after a year too broke to keep up and too stubborn to ask for help. People around here, neighbors, old classmates, even some clients look at me like I'm a cautionary tale. That Alex kid, they'd whisper, had potential but threw it away. I don't argue. I just nod, do the job, and move on. No need to explain myself to folks who've already made up their minds. 3 years ago, I got it worse than usual. Ryan, my buddy from high school, had a sister named Sophia. She was older, maybe 39 back then, sharp as a tack, and twice as intimidating. She was a teacher, the kind who could silence a room with a glance. Ryan and I used to hang out, play video games, sneak beers from his dad's fridge. But one night, Sophia caught us skipping some school event to mess around in their garage. She tore into me like I was the devil himself. "You're dragging my brother down with you," she said, her voice cold and cutting. "You're useless, Alex. You'll never amount to anything." Those words stuck like a splinter you can't pull out. I avoided her after that. Ryan moved away for college and we drifted apart. I figured I'd never see Sophia again. So, when my phone buzzed on a rainy Thursday afternoon, her name flashing across the screen, I nearly dropped the wrench I was holding. I was under a sink at a client's house fixing a pipe that wouldn't stop dripping. Sophia calling me. I let it go to voicemail, half convinced it was a mistake, but she called again. I wiped my hands on my jeans and answered, cautious. "Alex, it's Sophia," she said. Her voice clipped, but not as harsh as I remembered. "My water heater's acting up and the guy I hired bailed. Can you come by? I'll pay you." I froze. "Why me?" She hadn't spoken to me in years. Not since she ripped me apart. But the job meant cash and my rent was due. "Sure," I mumbled. "I'll be there in an hour." Her house was in the nicer part of town, a big 2-story, with ivy climbing the walls and a porch that looked like it belonged in a magazine. I parked my truck, grabbed my toolbox, and trudged through the drizzle to her front door. The air smelled like wet leaves and asphalt. I rang the bell, half expecting her to open the door and start lecturing me again. When she appeared, I wasn't ready. Sophia looked different. Not softer exactly, but less like the iron-willed teacher I remembered. Her hair was tied back loosely, a few strands falling over her face. She wore a simple grey sweater and jeans, but there was a quiet confidence in the way she stood, like she didn't need to prove anything to anyone. Her eyes, though, carried a tiredness I hadn't noticed before. "Alex," she said, stepping aside to let me in. Her tone was all business. "The heater's in the basement. I don't need you to say anything. Just fix it and go." I nodded, keeping my mouth shut. The inside of her house hit me like a wave, warm, cozy, filled with the scent of candles. Shelves lined with jars of wax, some glowing softly, others neatly labeled with handwritten tags. Lavender, sandalwood, pine. Old family photos sat on a mantel above a fireplace, and a faint hum of jazz drifted from somewhere deeper in the house. It was the kind of place that felt lived in, but lonely, like it was waiting for something to fill it. I headed downstairs, toolbox in hand, feeling her eyes on my back. Whatever this was, I'd do the job and get out, just like she wanted. The basement was dim, lit only by a single bulb hanging from the ceiling. The water heater stood in the corner, a hulking metal thing that looked older than me. I set my toolbox down, the clank echoing in the quiet. Rain battered the small window above a steady drum that made the space feel smaller, more enclosed. I got to work checking the thermostat, the pressure valve, the pipes. It wasn't a complicated fix, just a worn-out element that needed replacing, but I took my time. Something about being in Sophia's house made me want to get it right to prove I wasn't the screw-up she'd once called me. I heard her footsteps before I saw her. She came halfway down the stairs, leaning against the wall, arms crossed. Her sweater hugged her frame, and the faint glow from upstairs caught the edges of her hair. She didn't say anything, just watched. I kept my focus on the heater, but I could feel her eyes like they were measuring me. Not in a cruel way, but like she was trying to figure something out. I tightened a bolt, wiped my hands on my jeans, and finally spoke. Should be done soon. Just need to test it. She nodded, her face unreadable, and set a glass of water on the table nearby. Don't die of thirst, she said, then turned and went back upstairs. It was the first thing she'd said that wasn't a command, and it threw me off. Was that kindness? I finished up, tested the heater, and packed my tools. The water was running hot again, and I felt a small flicker of pride. Job done. Time to go. But when I stepped outside, the rain had turned into a full-on storm. Sheets of water poured down, flooding the driveway, turning the street into a blurry mess. My truck was parked a good 20 feet away, and I'd be soaked to the bone before I even got the door open. I hesitated under the porch awning, weighing my options. Drive home and risk hydroplaning, or wait it out and deal with Sophia's cold shoulder. Neither sounded great. Before I could decide, the front door opened behind me. Sophia stood there, one hand on the knob, her expression softer than before, but still guarded. Don't go out in that, she said. You'll get sick or worse, crash that junkyard truck of yours. Come inside. Sit in the living room. I'm not going to bite. Her voice was firm, but there was something else in it. A crack, like she didn't want to be alone either. I opened my mouth to argue, but the wind whipped rain across my face, and I gave in. All right, I said, stepping back inside, just till it lets up. The living room was warm, almost too warm, with the glow of candles flickering on every surface. Lavender, vanilla, something woody. Her handmade candles filled the air with a mix of scents that made my head swim. A small speaker played soft jazz, the kind you'd hear in a coffee shop at midnight. Old family photos lined the mantel, a younger Sophia, with Ryan, their parents, a dog that probably wasn't around anymore. It felt like stepping into someone's life, not just their house. I sat on the edge of the sofa, toolbox at my feet, feeling out of place in my grease-stained shirt and work boots. Sophia came back with a towel and, to my surprise, a steaming mug of tea. She set them on the coffee table without looking at me. Dry off, she said. You're dripping on my floor. I grabbed the towel, mumbling a thanks, and wiped my face. The tea smelled like chamomile, warm and calming. I held the mug, letting it warm my hands, and glanced at her. She was sitting across from me in an armchair, legs crossed, staring out the window at the rain. Her face was softer now, less like the teacher who'd torn into me years ago. I don't know why I said it, but the words slipped out. I didn't think you'd ever be this nice to me. She turned her head, one eyebrow raised, a faint smirk, tugging at her lips. I didn't think you'd stay quiet this long, she said. You were always mouthing off back then. I let out a short laugh, surprised she remembered me that well. Yeah, well, I learned to shut up when I need to. She tilted her head, studying me, and for a second, I thought I saw something like curiosity in her eyes. Maybe you've changed, she said almost to herself. The jazz filled the silence, and the rain kept falling. I didn't know it yet, but that moment sitting there with a mug of tea, her words hanging in the air, was the start of something I never saw coming. The rain didn't let up. It pounded the windows, a constant hum that blended with the jazz still playing softly in Sophia's living room. I sat on the sofa, the chamomile tea cooling in my hands, the towel draped over my shoulder. Sophia stayed in her armchair, one leg tucked under her eyes drifting between me and the flickering candles on the coffee table. The air felt heavy, not tense exactly, but thick with something unspoken. I'd planned to fix her water heater and leave, but here I was, stuck in her house, her world, and it didn't feel like an accident anymore. She broke the silence first. "You still remember that night, don't you?" she asked, her voice low, almost careful. "When I called you out in front of Ryan," I nodded, my jaw tightening. How could I forget? Her words had cut deeper than I'd ever let on. "You said I was useless," I replied, keeping my tone even. "Said I'd never amount to anything." She winced just slightly and looked down at her hands. "I was wrong," she said. "I thought I was protecting my brother. I saw you two skipping school, drinking, acting like the world owed you something. I didn't know you then. I just judged." Her voice trailed off and she met my eyes. "I'm sorry, Alex. I didn't know what to say." An apology from Sophia was the last thing I expected. I shifted on the sofa, the leather creaking under me. "It's fine," I mumbled, but it wasn't. Not really. Those words had followed me for years, feeding every doubt I had about myself. She seemed to sense it. She stood, walked to a shelf, and picked up a small candle, its glass jar catching the light. "I made this one a while back," she said, holding it out. "Pine, for when I need to feel grounded. I think it suits you more." I took it, my fingers brushing hers for a second. The scent hit me crisp, earthy like a forest after rain. "How'd you know I like pine?" I asked, half joking. She shrugged a faint smile, tugging at her lips. "Lucky guess." We started talking, really talking for the first time. I told her about my life. Not the polished version, but the real one. The odd jobs, the clients who looked through me like I was invisible. The way I'd learned to keep my head down and just get through. "People think I'm a dropout who gave up," I said, staring at the candle in my hands. "Maybe they are right. But I'm still here trying." She listened, not interrupting, her eyes steady on me. Then she spoke. "I used to think I had it all figured out," she said. "Teaching a fiancé a plan, but plans fall apart. He left. The job burned me out. Now it's just me in this house making candles to feel like I'm still creating something." Her voice was quiet, but it carried a weight I recognized. Loneliness, the kind you don't admit out loud. She got up and headed to the kitchen, motioning for me to follow. "You hungry?" she asked. I was, but I hadn't realized it until she said it. She pulled out a pot, some pasta, a bottle of red wine. "Nothing fancy," she warned, but the way she moved, confident, unhurried, made it feel like more than just dinner. We ate at a small dining table, the candles casting soft shadows on the walls. The pasta was simple. The wine was cheap, but we laughed over it, swapping stories about music we loved. She was into jazz. I leaned toward classic rock, stupid things we did as kids. Even the time I crashed Ryan's bike into a ditch. For a moment, it felt like we weren't the guy she'd called useless and the woman who'd written me off. We were just us. As the night wore on, I glanced at the clock. It was late, and I figured I'd crash on the sofa until the rain stopped. I started to settle in, but Sophia appeared with a blanket, her expression softer than I'd ever seen. This house has 3 rooms, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But tonight, I don't want to be alone in any of them. I froze my heart, thawing. Her eyes held mine vulnerable, but sure, like she was taking a risk she hadn't planned. If you still think I'm some cold, judgmental woman, she added. You can leave in the morning, but tonight, don't let me stay up alone. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. I took the blanket, our fingers brushing again, and sat back down. We kept talking, our voices low, the space between us shrinking. The rain, the candles, her quiet laugh, it all blurred together, pulling us closer. Not physically, but in a way that felt deeper. I didn't know where this was going, but for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything. The rain had softened to a drizzle, but the air in Sophia's living room felt heavier than ever. The candles flickered, casting long shadows across the walls, and the jazz had looped back to a slow, mournful saxophone. We sat closer now, the blanket she'd given me draped over the arm of the sofa, my knee almost touching hers. Our conversation had tapered off, leaving a quiet that wasn't empty, but full of things neither of us was ready to say. I kept replaying her words in my head. Don't let me stay up alone. They weren't just about tonight. They felt like a confession, like she was reaching for something she hadn't let herself want in a long time. And I wanted to reach back, but a part of me held back, tangled in doubts I couldn't shake. I leaned back, running a hand through my hair. Sophia, I started, my voice rougher than I meant it to be. Why am I here? Really, she looked at me, her eyes narrowing slightly like she was trying to read my thoughts. You fixed my heater, she said, a faint smirk playing on her lips. I didn't laugh. You know what I mean. You hated me 3 years ago. Called me useless. Now I'm sitting here drinking your wine, talking like we are something. What's going on? Her smirk faded and she set her glass down, the clink loud in the quiet room. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stood, walked to the window, and stared out at the rain-soaked street. I don't know, she said finally. I didn't plan this. I didn't plan you. That should have felt good, but it didn't. My mind spun, dragging up every insecurity I'd buried. She was 42, successful with a house full of candles she'd poured her heart into. I was 25, a dropout scraping by, living in a dump with a truck that barely started. And she was Ryan's sister, someone who'd seen me at my worst, who'd judged me before I had a chance to prove myself. What if this was just a moment for her? A lonely night, a glass of wine too many, a guy who happened to be there. I stood, grabbing my jacket from the armrest. Maybe I should go, I said, my voice low. The rain's slowing. I don't want to overstay. She turned, her eyes sharp, but not angry. Alex, she said, stepping closer. Don't. Her voice was steady, but there was a crack in it, a vulnerability I hadn't heard before. I stopped, jacket in hand, my heart pounding. Don't what? I asked. She took another step close enough that I could smell the faint lavender on her sweater. Don't assume you know what I'm thinking, she said. You're not just some guy who fixed my heater. You're not useless. You never were. I was wrong, and I hate that I made you feel like that. Her words hit hard like a punch I didn't see coming. I wanted to believe her, but doubt clung to me like damp clothes. I opened my mouth to argue, to say I wasn't good enough for this, whatever this was, but she closed the distance between us. Her hand caught mine, gentle but firm, and she pulled me toward her. Not a kiss, not yet, but an embrace. Her arms wrapping around me like she was anchoring herself. I froze for a second, then let my arms fold around her, my jacket dropping to the floor. Her head rested against my shoulder, her breath warm against my neck. It wasn't about desire. It was deeper, like we were both holding on to something we'd lost. Stay, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rain. Not because of the weather, because I want you here. I pulled back just enough to look at her. Her eyes were open, unguarded, and for the first time, I saw the woman behind the confidence. The candles, the sharp words from years ago. She was scared, too scared of being alone, of opening up, of what this might mean. I wanted to ask why me, why now? But the questions felt small compared to the moment. Instead, I nodded. Okay, I said, my voice thick. I'll stay. We didn't move to the bedroom, or cross any lines. She led me back to the sofa, and we sat there, her hand still in mine, the silence saying more than words could. The rain kept falling. The candles kept burning. And something inside me shifted. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to prove myself. I just had to be there. Morning came quietly. The kind of quiet that follows a storm. The rain had stopped, leaving only the drip of water from the eaves and a faint mist hanging over the street. I woke up on Sophia's sofa. The blanket she'd given me tangled around my legs. The living room smelled of pine and lavender, her candles still flickering on the table, though some had burned out. My neck ached from the awkward angle I'd slept in. But I didn't care. Something felt different. Not just the room, but me. For the first time in a long time, I didn't wake up wondering if I was enough. I sat up, rubbing my eyes, and noticed the soft clink of a mug from the kitchen. Sophia was already awake, standing on the porch just beyond the open glass door. She wore an oversized sweater, her hair loose, a steaming coffee cup in her hands. The morning light caught her profile, and she looked peaceful, but there was a trace of something else. Maybe sadness, maybe hope. I stood folding the blanket and stepped outside to join her. The air was cool, the ground still wet. Morning, I said, my voice rough from sleep. She turned, her lips curving into a small smile. You didn't sneak out, she said, almost teasing. Thought about it, I replied, matching her tone. But my truck's probably half submerged. We stood there, the silence comfortable, the kind you don't need to fill with words. The porch overlooked her small backyard, where a string of unlit bulbs hung crookedly over a wooden bench. I remembered her water heater, the job that brought me here, and how it felt like a lifetime ago. I wanted to say something about last night, about her hand and mine. The hug that felt like more than a hug, but I didn't know where to start. Before I could, she spoke. I never apologized properly, she said, her eyes on the horizon. For what I said back then, calling you useless, judging you without knowing you.